I'm Kyle Bradshaw, and I'm joined here, as always, with my dear friend Abner Lee.
Hello.
Some of you may know this is the 9 to 5 Google podcast. Longtime listeners will know that anyway, but it's been on hold for a little bit, and we decided that there is never a better time to bring back Alphabet Scoop than the one time of the year when there is so very much to talk about, and that is Google I/O.
Indeed. So let's just jump right in. Google I/O was last Wednesday. We're recording on a Monday. We've had a few days, a weekend to digest everything. So let's just dive right into the biggest thing, AI. That was the overwhelming theme of Google I/O 2023. And I think they started it on a good note. They always like to do Google Photos because that's a fun, relatable thing. And the example they did was Magic Editor. Basically, it's advanced Photoshop skills in which you can move the subjects around. You can reposition, adjust the composition of a photo, basically. I would say that in itself, people have been able to do this with Photoshop and other tools, but now it's just automated with the power of generative AI. And I think this was the early crowd pleaser. And I'm not sure if I'll use this, but I don't know. Kyle, what do you think?
I mean, I do a lot of these goofy things often enough that maybe I would, and this would just be an easier tool to do it with. But I'm actually a little suspicious because it seems a little too good to be true. Like, removing the fence from the foreground of an image. Remember that demonstration we did at I/O? What was that, 18 or 17? And it just never happened.
Yeah,
I could see this being in the same camp.
Oh, the fence, the infamous fence example was absolutely an example of them being too ambitious. To be less pessimistic, I would say that they did have that example working in the lab, but they could never. Maybe they were assuming that they would get the kinks out by the time they launch it, and that they could announce it safely at I/O, but it never got to that point. I think with Magic Editor, this seems much further along, building on Magic Eraser. I think this is a bit further along than the infamous fence example, and I think they can execute here.
You're right. I'm just not sure if it's going to be this year, because I feel like anything that is coming soon got an onstage demo, where this was, here's what it can do using very specific pre-generated examples. They didn't demo it live on stage like some of the other
Very
AI
true.
tools.
And they didn't even show off the UI. They didn't show off the basic UI for this. So officially this is launching into preview on select Pixel devices, which I don't know if that's code for the Pixel 8 come this fall, but to your point, I could definitely see that that they launch quote unquote this feature in December, this coming December, with only a few people having access to it. I think that might be the scenario we have. But to what you were saying, the other examples Google showed off were so much closer to being final products. I think with Workspace, that was one of the most immediate places that people will get to experience this kind of stuff. And at the end of last week, they rolled out Help Me Write in Gmail and Docs to many more people. And at I/O, they previewed image generation in Google Slides, as well as Google Meet to make custom backgrounds. That didn't get any stage time, though. And there are Sheets being able to make automatic spreadsheets, basically. I think that example, some people will find it extremely useful because making sheets is generally hard sometimes, but I think it was less flashy than image generation.
Certainly, but I think the one thing that's really clear here is that none of these tools are doing anything new. It's more about making the AI generation more accessible. Like, all throughout the keynote and the dev keynote, it seemed like Google was finding any example of, here's a text box, okay, now you can generate AI for that text box, whatever that text box may be. So... or image generation in the case of slides and all that. These are existing capabilities that many tools have already been doing. Now Google's just making them a little bit more accessible, which isn't a strong showing, but especially given the early impressions people have had of Bard, I don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think the problem I see. I know there's this broader discussion about the usability of like large language models inherently require you to enter prompts, and sometimes it's just hard to fill a box to know what you want to do. Like in an ideal world, like a lot of LLMs by design that you can just phrase what you're thinking, you can just type out what you're thinking, and it'll be able to generate something for you. But I think the really interesting in Google, in recognizing that it's sometimes hard to even know the right prompt, they introduced this sidekick feature. It's a side panel for, well, everything in all the AI in Workspace will be branded as something called Duet AI. And this sidekick UI, which appeared on the web right next to your profile picture, which I think is like a very interesting emphasis on how you're supposed to collaborate with AI in Google's world. You get this side panel that summarizes your document and suggests prompts for you, and that you can enter your own text. I think that's one of the more interesting UIs for this.
Yeah, it's almost a user education tool in its own way, because it's teaching you how to use AI. You may not necessarily need to be given prompts all the time forever, but in this initial stage where people are just getting started using AI tools for the first time, they don't know what to put in the box. They don't know how to get an output that looks like something they would want. So yeah, it is cool that they're feeding the prompts to you a little bit to show you what a good prompt looks like.
I'm kind of curious how all this translates to mobile UIs, to mobile apps, because almost everything they showed was on the web. We know what Help Me Write looks like in Gmail for Android. Actually, we don't know what it looks like in Docs. They haven't really shared that UI, and I don't think we've encountered it yet. But I'm really interested in how they translate all these large screen UIs into mobile, into a single column mobile UI. I don't know if it's overlays or if there's a dedicated space in the app, but yeah, I think I'm actually really curious how these AIs translate over to mobile.
Yeah, the easiest way they could have done it would have been to integrate through Gboard, but that would be such a privacy thing, because that's everything that you type anywhere on your phone except incognito windows. Like,
we are 2 seconds away from like plugins for Gboard or something like that. Gboard becoming like a platform for all this stuff would be interesting.
Right, because it's already there. Like, it's your keyboard. It's how you type. You're there to type everything. So it's perfect for being everywhere, but it's also terrible in a privacy sense because it is everywhere. So that's every message you write in every app. It would need to look at the text in all of those apps to even get the context. And Gboard would be where I'd want to put it, because that's kind of the UI, or at least that location is the UI that Google Messages used, for example.
Mm-hmm. The Gboard suggestion row is like a natural place for that.
That too, yeah.
So yeah, that was Workspace, which I think is how most people will interact with AI first. And I think that's where Google's advantage in the field will really show, because so many people use Workspace products. But a close second, or in fact the first, would be search, AI in search, which Google's calling the search generative experience. It's basically, again, they're on the web. They also showed it on mobile in this case. Directly beneath the search bar, you'll get this new AI snapshot space that shows just generated responses with a color background. That's how they're going to provide an immediate answer to you, a generated answer to you. And this is the scale of that's going to be a big change for everybody.
No joke, especially like Google had to show this to be able to stay competitive against Bing, which is a wild thing to even think about, that Google had to stay competitive against Bing, but it needed to be done, because I think if Bing didn't do what they did, and if they didn't integrate it so quickly and roll it out so quickly, I think we wouldn't have seen a lot of these things, but especially the search generative experience, until later this year at some event like Google Search On.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And according to rumors, the SGE is codenamed Magi. There's supposed to be something else coming down the pipeline, according to one of those handful of rumors before I/O. But yeah, this is the first take, and honestly, I'm surprised at how comprehensive this is. I thought Google is going to be not as, I don't know, matured, but this seemed to me, the SGE seems pretty mature. They have a full thought out idea on how to implement generative AI in search. I honestly wasn't expecting that yet, as you were saying, but I don't know. It's people like getting one answer. That's the truth of it. That's what Google, Bing, and others are tapping into. And I don't know. I think this, for better or worse, seems to be the future.
Yeah, it's just interesting the way that it works, or the way that it kind of flies against some of the things that, or it's interesting in the way that it seems to be Google doubling down on some of the things that it's gotten fussed at before, like a lot of websites and webmasters and companies like Yelp have been complaining about the way that Google keeps people on the website instead of driving traffic elsewhere and out of Google search. Where a generative AI thing like this, I mean, one can assume that there will be cited sources like how Bing does, and Bard, Bing and Bard both do that. This is just one more step of keeping people in Google search. Like, if you can just type in the question to Google search and you get one answer, you're going to just use that one answer instead of going further out.
There's a bit of a chicken and egg to this, though. Who was Google responding to user demand in terms that users just want one answer, or was Google with featured snippets responsible for training users to expect one answer? It's a real chicken and egg thing, and I don't know, it's going to be a wild future figuring it out.
As long as the answers are intelligent and relevant, I think that this is still going to be a positive over the current SEO madness that Google search is going through right now. So hopefully this will work out for the better.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I I think for all of this to work, at some point, search engines might have to pay licensing fees. I know that's something that other countries are doing already. If news appears in Google search, Google has to pay a license fee. But I don't know if that's like the inevitable future of generated content of whatever you're training. And that's, it's a broader question right now, but I don't know if that's the future we're heading to at this point to sustain the content that's powering these generative AIs if we eventually need that, some kind of arrangement there. And that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, that's search. It's entering testing the next few months. You can sign up for it with the labs. It's so in the US. It's so prominent. It's on the top left corner of the Google app, Android, iOS, and it's on the Chrome New tab page. It's really prominent. Google really wants people to experiment with this, and I think that's pretty explicit and pretty bold. That again, I'm surprised that they're this far along, that they're ready for people to test. So that's going to be interesting. But yeah, that's search. Something a wee bit more fun is Magic Compose.
Which one's Magic Compose again? Is that the Google Messages one?
It's in Google Messages, and yeah, these names, they're going to be a lot.
Yeah, because I mean, I'm just looking at our run sheet and I'm seeing Magic Compose in here twice, which means that we got confused at one point and put this Google Messages name for Google Photos.
Yeah,
so yes, it's a very confusing thing that Google's done here.
Yeah, it's again, I have said that this should all be called Assistant, but we're not doing that yet. They're not doing that
Google.
yet.
Google, you make a good point, because Google didn't say the word assistant even once. I'm not sure, but definitely did not make assistant a prominent placement anywhere in the keynotes.
They did not. No, but rather we have Magic Compose, and I don't know, it seems fun, the ability to... I mean, it's basically the Help Me Write feature in Gmail, but in a much shorter, funner message format. So I think people will find this fun, but there's going to be a point where, did you really write this? That's going to be annoying.
At the very least, the messages are of a short enough length that people should have at least read the thing before they tapped it, rather than just... immediately choosing the first one. But I mean, you could already tell before when it was just smart reply. I can always tell when my friend texts me back by just tapping one of the auto replies on his Galaxy Watch. I'm like, that man did not message me. He gave me a Galaxy Watch thumbs up. I'm sure of it.
I feel that so much in Gmail when people I can tell when you respond with smart reply. It's pretty obvious in hindsight, but yeah, that's like the fun. That was a pretty fun feature. And equally fun was cinematic emoji and generative AI wallpapers. I don't know, cinematic and emoji. Is that really generative AI? Well, there's elements of it.
I don't think either of those. I mean, maybe there's a little bit in the cinematic one, but the cinematic one is mostly using the depth of data from your photo, and it just kind of
and something that Google Photos already does with the memories feature. So that's existing technology. But yeah, that's coming next month. But the generative AI wallpapers coming this fall, I guess, presumably with the Pixel 8.
Yeah, that's bold. That's beyond. If you look at an AI generated image, you can most of the time tell that it's an AI generated image unless it's by a really good model. And I guess Imagen, Google's image generation thing, is pretty on par with some of the best ones out there. So I guess, but that's just like a big vote of confidence from Google to actually put that as wallpapers, because wallpapers are something that you look at constantly, and wallpapers are something that you care about a whole lot more in the current Android era because of Material You. So again, big vote of confidence from Google on that.
At the same time, if the AI messes up, you can just call it abstract and call it a day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, Gen AI wallpapers, that's presumably this fall, Android 14. Speaking of which, the Android section, well, it wasn't as big of a section compared to generative AI, let's say, but the historical Android section, Android 14 was only mentioned once in the context of lock screen clocks and shortcuts, two features that we have been tracking since 13 QPR3, but as making, well, lock screen shortcuts we've been tracking pretty early. But lock screen clocks, they're finally coming. This years in the making, honestly.
Yeah, I want to say it was Android 10 that we were first looking at lock screen clocks. It has been a while, and it seemed like they had just given up on it and then applied the work that they did to Wear OS instead. And now it's coming back to phones, I guess just in response to iOS.
Yeah.
I don't really care about this. It's fine. I'm glad it's there for those who do care. It's just it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, it's like, it does not look like lock screen clocks appear to be reflections of the Pixel brand or the OEM brand rather than something like Google's opening up in the Play Store, for example. Maybe this is just early days and they're starting with their own set of stuff, but there are no like APIs for developers to plug into. Not yet anyways, but it seems to be that this is just like an expression, like the Pixel design, another expression of OEM design, and that's fine for now, but I'm sure users will want it opened up eventually.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a pattern for that to happen, like all the themes that Pixel phones used to have. Like, you used to be able to change your icon shape and the color, the accent color of everything like that. That was all official things, and then they eventually opened it up, except icons. I think that's just locked in now, but whatever.
Yeah, icons should be circles, and it annoys me that Samsung doesn't use circles. But anyways, yeah, lock screen clocks, that is like the one big tentpole of Android 14 that we got, which it's coming from past years where the Android portion was huge. It was surprising, but they did announce other features. They did talk about other features for the ecosystem in general, and what they highlighted was tablet optimizations for apps, more Wear OS apps, and the Find My expansion, which is coming this summer.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this Find My expansion, finally being able to use Bluetooth trackers and being able to locate missing headphones. And it was really good to see that Tile was included too, because we weren't sure about that from our sourcing, but it's really good to see that Tile was included, because that's a big brand.
Yeah, they're opening it up.
Yeah, it's good Basically. To see that they're making it more accessible and making it more useful rather than only working online. Like, oh, okay, my phone is online, it has its SIM card in it, there is cell service, okay, I can locate it. Versus now, you can locate it just about anywhere with Bluetooth, so long as another Android device in the network spots your device.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty exciting.
Devices. It's a wide network, and it was probably inevitable when Apple announced their equivalent network. So the platforms Android's is getting feature parity in this regard. So yeah, that was the big thing coming this summer, independent of OS release by the looks of it. Google Play services powered. But yeah, I don't know, Android 14, in sessions, we got features like Ultra HDR still images, which I'm really surprised Google didn't announce that during the main keynote, because that's just like an obvious crowd pleaser. I don't know, in sessions, we got some privacy and security stuff, like partial screen sharing. The Material You talks gave us the monochrome and contrast themes. But other than that, it's Android 14. We don't know what's officially going to be in it. What's the big stuff is. If there are any other tentpoles besides lock screen customization.
Right, and that's usually something that Google talks about a lot ahead of time. There, as you mentioned, it's usually an entire section of Google I/O is whatever that year's Android release is, because I/O has been like the Android event each year, and this year that just wasn't the case. It took a firm backseat to AI. The question I'm left with is, when does Google have another chance to talk about Android 14 before release? Because the only other major event that I can think of is the Dev Summit, which is going to be probably in October or something, which is months after the new release is expected to hit, which is in August. And honestly, just from what Google said on stage and the way that the timing of these things has worked before, that Dev Summit is probably going to be focused more on the big XR push for Android rather than being anything about Android 14.
Yeah, I'm really surprised we didn't get more on XR, so earlier this year, Google, Samsung, and Qualcomm announced that they're all working on their XR platform. It'll be powered by a Qualcomm chip in a Samsung headset, running an optimized version of Android. We only got a tease about it, saying that there's going to be more this year. But I don't know, my big thinking going into this was that they would do the developer story at I/O, obviously, and they would detail, I don't know, basic UI, building tools, but we got none of that. And that makes me think that the initial release is just going to be with some limited partners, and that we won't get a full developer moment for this until next I/O.
I am not sure I agree. I think the Dev Summit has a chance to be that at the very least, because I think that's what, isn't that where 12L and foldables were first talked about? Was that a Dev Summit?
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, Dev Summit.
So I could see them doing a similar thing, just doing a big XR push at this year's Dev Summit, which again brings me back to the question: when are they going to talk about 14? I don't know when they're going to have a chance.
Yeah, it's, I don't know, I guess you could say that it's, since the lines between what's an Android feature and what's a Pixel feature is so blurred that I don't know, even making that argument, it sounds like Android's stature is being decreased rather significantly in that regard. But I don't know. It's, again, we don't know what's new in Android 14, and we usually get 10 polls at I/O. So it'll be...
And even from the perspective of our APK Insight team, for example, we dig into each of these releases and we look for every little thing, and nothing seems obvious yet. Usually Beta 1 or Beta 2 will have something that shows sign of something happening.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't seem to be there yet, which is confusing and suspicious.
And it makes lock screen clocks, again, to the idea that this is a Pixel edition rather than a platform edition, because Samsung, they've offered that kind of customization for a long time now, and I guess it's just the Pixel doing catch up. So yeah, similar thing is Wear OS 4. We don't know a lot about it. It's entered developer preview last week. It's going to be more battery efficient. There's a new watch face format with Samsung. Backup, you'll be able to back up and restore finally. We're kind of surprised it requires Wear OS 4, because Google has been working on this for a bit in Play services, so it's surprised that we're waiting until that to get it. But yeah, again, like Wear OS 4, we don't know that much. Besides that it's coming later this year. I think one of the blog posts said this fall. But other than that, it's, again, we don't know what the tentpole features are. I don't know. There's not much in using it in the emulator. I don't know. There's not a lot.
No, I mean the two things that are there could be important. Like for one, there's Material You with some effort, which by the time this podcast airs, you may have seen the headline about that on 9to5 Google. It hasn't gone up yet, but we'll see. There's an interesting implementation of Material You and its dynamic color system on there, matching to your current watch face, whatever that may be. Combine that with the new watch face format, which should help open up Wear OS to more customization, because developers can just make the face and release it. They don't have to optimize it, as it were, because Android will do that for it. So that's cool. And is developer-y, and that was a good reason to show it off at I.O. And it's more than I can say about Android 14. But yeah, there's nothing too user-facing yet. But I think a lot of that's going to come from the implementation of each individual watch, though, too.
Yeah, it's the Pixel has their own take on the OS. Samsung has its own take on the OS. So it's very much going to be device-specific. It's running Android 13. It takes everything that's been announced in Android 12 and 13 and upgrades the Wear OS 3 from Android 11. So that's overdue. But yeah, this is just the preview 1. There's many more features that are OEM specific, but at this point, not a lot yet. And yeah, in terms of developer announcements, Kyle, what did you find interesting? What's your top developer announcement? I feel like I know the answer here.
So I think the coolest developer thing that they released is probably Kodi, which is this is it the coolest thing? Maybe not, just because GitHub has done this with Copilot and Amazon has done this with CodeWeaver. But Google's Kodi is really good in the way that it is able to AI generate new code. It's able to AI generate based on your code, rather than using code from the internet, which has different copyright issues and things like that. You have to... Yeah, this will be good for companies. It'll also be good for people who want to feel better about their open source code. And also, it's nice that it's able to just write code that looks like your code. So I'm kind of excited with the way that that's going to go. But Jetpack had some cool stuff going on, like Compose for TV looks cool. I was surprised we didn't hear anything about Android TV, especially because we had we reported about a new Android TV developer device. No sign of that here. There were a lot of different things, but I think Kodi was the one thing that developers are actually going to get to use, unless you live in the European Union, of course, in which case you don't get to use any Google AI whatsoever. I don't know. What did you think?
Yeah, it's the I.O. is a developer conference. I would say coming out of this I.O., the developer sentiment hasn't been overwhelming. I know Android Studios, StudioBot it's called officially?
Yes, StudioBot.
The reception hasn't been overwhelming. I don't know, it's not there yet. What Google wants the main story to be is AI, and AI benefiting developers. But I think this is more indicative of it's still early, or maybe Google hasn't established, they haven't set in stone what their strategy is yet. it's how generative AI applies to Android, to Chrome, its core platforms. I don't think that story is there yet because these platforms are by design mature, and like any you can't make significant changes to them just yet at will, basically. So it's still early days in Google's favorite parlance, but yeah. So moving out of that software side, let's get into the hardware side. And the Pixel 7a officially launched. Carl, you've been using it for over a week, almost two. How is it for you? The colors, you can see some of the colors in stores, but the charming coral orange one is only online at the Google store. But I've seen it in person, and it's absolutely delightful. And it does make me want to go from my Pixel 7 to my 7a just for the colors for a few months. Maybe I would have if the Pixel 4 wasn't happening, but how has the 7a been for you?
I've really liked it, and part of it is just my own laziness, but I have not yet switched back to the Pixel 7 Pro. That was my main phone for months and months and months, and I just haven't switched back yet because I'm like, this one works fine. Why would I swap? It's working just fine. I mean, yeah. I will say that the battery issues have popped up a little bit for me, but it's not every day, and I'm not having anything like other people are talking about. It's a phone. It lasts all day. It has a 90 hertz display. It looks nice. The photos it takes are really nice. Like we're gonna do a comparison here soon of the two, but I'm impressed with what this phone's able to do for $499.
Yeah, $499. That is the big price point. I know you used a 5A a few years ago, 2 years ago, and this is an appreciable difference, I assume. I can only assume.
Oh my gosh, the 5A. I'm not even sure. The 5A was a strange phone. It didn't really fit in to the mold of what Pixel A phones have been, and that's primarily because that entire generation before, with the 4A 5G and the Pixel 5, those were both already mid-range phones. Like the Pixel 7A is equivalent, I would say, to the Pixel 5. Just in terms of the quality that it brings. Like, this is essentially a flagship phone, or to the extent that the Pixel 5 was. The Pixel 5A was just a battery tank.
Yes.
I could run that thing for over 2 days on a single charge, depending on how much I used it, and if I turned always on display off. But to only have to charge my phone every other day, that's worth it. I'll take it. I don't care. Or to have a phone that I know will last in case of an emergency, such an emergency that exactly happened while I was using the Pixel 5A, I'm all for it.
Yeah, it's the battery. It was a underwhelming phone in other regards, except for the battery. It's saving grace. But yeah, the 7A, I don't know, it looks really good. It's nice colors. The $50 price increase is more than justified. Google's keeping the 6A around. It's a good package. It's quite a good package.
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to the camera and the wireless charging. If you don't care about either of those features, get the 6A. But if you want a better camera, the 7A is worth it. Absolutely worth it.
How's the build? So Google redesigned the mid-frame to be simpler and to better withstand drops. That was the big engineering effort for this phone. And of course, it uses a plastic back instead of the glass of the 7. How are you feeling about that?
Feels just fine in the hand. It's smooth. I mean, I honestly don't know that I would have been able to just immediately tell the difference between that could just be my own bias, though. But it feels fine. they're both very smooth in the hand, that you're not really caring about whether it's plastic or not. Like sometimes you hold plastic and you're like, plastic. I know.
Yeah.
No, this doesn't feel like bad, nasty plastic.
Mm. So
the metal frame is also like really well done. Like the subtlety of the blue on the C Pixel 7a. I love it. They did a very good job here.
Very good colors. So let's put it this way. So the last year, the Pixel 6a before the 7, I could definitely say there's an appreciable difference between the 6a and the 7 in terms of build and quality and all that. There's the Pixel 7. There's the Pixel 7a. Does that raise the ante for the Pixel 8?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, there's going to be ways that Google is going to differentiate that phone, but yeah, there are people who are talking about whether or not Google's going to release another A series phone. I'm wondering why they should release another baseline flagship phone. I think they should just release Pixel 8 Pro, Pixel 8a, Pixel 9 Pro, Pixel 9a. Like, there doesn't need to be a baseline flagship when the A series is this good.
Yeah, especially at the price point, $100 difference. Especially when if these phones get discounted, that's $100. You're basically paying for build quality and hopefully a better camera. And we've already seen the Pixel 8 and 8 Pro leaks. The 8 Pro is the one getting that mysterious sensor, which could be LiDAR. To improve photography or AR use cases. But I don't know if like in boosting, with the A series being so good, are we at a point where, like in years past, the small flagship needs to be equivalent to the big flagship in terms of at least camera and screen, even to 120. I wonder if we're at a point where Google has to go back to its previous playbook of having identically capable phones with just purely different screen sizes and battery, if the A series is that good.
I just don't see the point in making two separate models like that. I think that they've landed on something very good with the 7A, in that it's a good everyman phone. Like, where previously you would kind of, or as a culture, we would kind of look at like the iPhone 14 or whatever, or the Pixel 7, just the baseline one. That's kind of the everyman phone. And then people who were enthusiasts for either side, you would get an upgraded one. Where here I feel like the everyman phone shouldn't be the Pixel 7, but should be the Pixel 7a. It just does everything that you need it to do, and if you don't really care about what your phone can do, this is the one to get. It can do all of basic phone things.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's the 7a. And then there are two other devices of particular note, to say the least. The Pixel Tablet, which is in short, it's coming out next month. I think Android is really good on it, and the software experience with the hub mode and the smart display stuff, that is promising. But the hardware itself, I'll need more time to use it. But basically, speaking of the Pixel 5, I wish that's the coating they used instead of this nano ceramic thing they went after. It's again, like in the time I've had to use the Pixel Tablet, the software looks really good. I've been waiting to use Android, Google's version of the Android tablet optimized Android for some time now. What Samsung adds is really just not that. But yeah, I'm looking forward to Android tablets for the first time in a really long time, since the Nexus 7, honestly. But yeah, Pixel tablet. I can't wait.
Setting aside review units, do you plan on buying one?
Yes, I have bought one, in fact.
Okay.
I have
one behind the curve then.
that was my one pre-order excitement. Day of pre-order arrangement, rather. But yeah, I don't know. I always think that we'll see if I follow through, but putting all my movies on a 256 tablet seems doable, and just having that as an entertainment device.
Makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah. The other thing, of course, is the Pixel Fold, which my stance on foldables is fundamentally the screen technology. Every time you open and close it, it fundamentally feels like you're breaking it a little bit. And I know everybody says they've tested it in terms of like the usable life of a phone. You won't get any issues with the screen. But to me, there's still a cognitive block waiting to happen. But yeah.
I could see that argument. For me, it's still just a matter of pricing. If the Pixel Fold cost the same as the Galaxy Z Fold 4, I might have thought about it. It still would have been a stretch for me, but I would have at least considered it. But at the pricing that Google's asking for it, it's obscene to me. Like, it's double a Pixel. I'm just not going to do it. For me, I'm too sketched out by foldables to want to pay double to buy one.
Yeah, I feel like it could really obviate the need for a tablet if you can get comfortable with using a foldable, or if foldables get bigger. I think there is a world where 7.6 inch screen is probably enough to let you do the tablety things you want to, especially with this aspect ratio that Google is going for on the Pixel Fold. But at the moment, not there yet for me.
Agreed.
Yeah. So the Pixel Fold, Pixel Tablet next month, we will have a lot of thoughts, and I'm sure most of this podcast over the coming weeks is going to be spent discussing that. Until then, this has been Alphabet Scoop. We're back on a weekly basis. You can find us on all your favorite podcasting platforms, and non-selfishly, we're bringing this back because we want to have a podcast again. But at the same time, I also need a podcast in YouTube Music podcast to experiment with. It's YouTube podcast is another top podcast topic for another day, but that's not going far yet. It's just not there yet, and let's see where it goes. Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, this has been delightful, and thank you to all our listeners for joining us, and we hope to see you again in the near future. And Please feel free to reach out with any comments, feedback, anything you just want to hear us talk about on the show. Let us know. We're open.
Yep. Until next time. Bye.
See ya.